Hello, everyone. My name is Ned Dennison. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We have with us honoree Philip Rush from New Zealand from the class of 1985. Philip, will you say hello, please?
Good morning. I think it's morning over there. It's definitely morning in New Zealand. I think it'll be evening where you are, Ned.
I think we're 23 hours difference or something crazy like that. Philip was an elite racer from 1980 to 1988. He also had 10 English Channel crossings, including a 1987 triple crossing in 28 hours, 21 minutes. And that crossing broke many individual records, some of which are still standing. And he also completed 2 double crossings of the 25.7 kilometer Cook Strait, New Zealand. And he continues to play a valuable role as he coaches and advises swimmers who challenge the Cook Strait. And he's coached more than 25 swimmers successfully across those waters. He also helped develop New Zealand's open water swimming program at the elite level. The purpose of this interview is to examine how elite racers manage to come to the United States and Canada and compete in big races over many weeks. So let's start with the early days of your career, Philip. Your first race, Capri Naples in 1980. I'm assuming you sort of flew out and back. Was it your first trip from New Zealand? And did somebody pick up all of your expenses?
Well, actually, Ned, I had one before then where we had a race in 79, 80 where we went to swim in the Nile River. We invited the Egyptians to New Zealand. And then we went back to the Nile when they used to run the race right in the middle of Cairo, and you pushed all the rubbish and bits and pieces out of your way. And if you survived the swim without getting chronic diarrhea or eaten by something that wasn't, you would end up getting a medal. 27 people, I think, started one race, and there was 6 of us finished. So that was my first international taste of swimming, which I'd wondered what the hell I'd let myself in for.
You sure you want to use the word taste?
People came and did all sorts of things while they were watching the swimming.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was my first international trip. From there, we went, and when the Isle of Capri was the world champs, once again, I just turned 16, I think it was. We went over to the Isle of Capri. We had an organisation here in New Zealand that helped fund us, and we that was in the days when it was strictly amateur and professional, and you had to declare what you were for New Zealand swimming, and also at the event in the Isle of Capri. Pretty amazing. You'd get transported out to the Isle of Capri to start with, and you'd train out there for the week prior. You know, you'd be swimming around in the Blue Grotto and all those sorts of things. And probably one of the things that I do remember was that year, we always took a coach with us from New Zealand so that we had that support. And as I say, I was only very young, and I remember my coach speaking with the skippers, and they had the little boats, and he said, how much do you want to win? And Tony Keenan he said, well, we really want to win. You know, we've come here, we haven't come here to muck around. He said, but how much do you want to win? And this went on for sort of 10, 15 minutes, and then Tony got the gist of it. Obviously, how much money did we want to pay to win? And, you know, he said, we can run a piano wire down, and we can do this and we can do that, but it will cost you. This was, you know, the local guys, the local fishermen that were certainly interested and motivated to make you win. But it was a lovely race. It was a beautiful swim. And the water was beautiful until you got to pretty much an hour off Naples. And then once again, we ended up finishing right in the heart of Naples. And the other thing that I do remember is once you finished, you touched that finish line, they grabbed you like a rag doll, and the medics grabbed you, threw you on a stretcher, threw you in an ambulance, and then went crazy with the horns and sirens going to the hospital, even if there was nothing wrong with you. So you had to get checked out, but you can just imagine going, the wheels going over the cobblestones, etc., etc., and it was just a noisy, really hyper finish to a beautiful swim.
In your second Capri Naples, I think you headed on to Lake Saint Jean in Canada as well.
We did, because we were very green, and when you left New Zealand, it's a long flight anywhere. So we'd be leaving winter, so we had to make the most of our money. I was supported by the government and some sponsors in New Zealand, but it was very minimal. At that point I'd declared that I would become a professional athlete, so then I was never allowed to swim in national meets in New Zealand anymore. And that helped our funding as well. When we were overseas, you'd be earning 100, I think it was 100 US an hour we got paid back then, and that's still, pretty good money these days. But once we started going into Canada, I would always travel with somebody, so I'd always have a coach. So the constant being is that I wasn't looking around for just somebody that thought they knew about swimming. My coach knew me. He knew how to get the best out of me, and we travelled for my whole career together.
And this is long before the internet. Was the coach sending letters to arrange accommodations? Were the organizers organizing it? Did you share rental cars with other swimmers?
Yeah. That first year it was a learning process. Once you got to St. John, they looked after you. They would find you accommodation. It was pretty amazing. You were right out in Lake St. John, which is close to the end of the earth.
Hang on. I grew up kind of near there. So you're speaking from the end of the earth now, young man. Keep that in mind. You would recognize it.
Yes, yeah. But the people were lovely, and you'd be billeted to save the costs, and then the town as such would have big festivals. They would shut down, and we were the highlight of the festival, was watching these crazy swimmers go across the lake. But the town would be open for a dinner, so their specialty was blueberry pie, and they'd always have lots of pie for you, and all the swimmers always put weight on when they were going up there. Funding wise, getting to these places, you'd meet good people. Paul Asmith and myself travel together all the time, so we would just get a rental car and start from the next year. We did the full circuit, and what would happen is we flew into Atlantic City, which was and we did the whole circuit. So then we drove from Atlantic City after the swim. We went to Lake Memphremagog, and then the next week we'd go to St. John, and then out to Passbebiac. Now, this is every Sunday we were swimming every Saturday or Sunday. We would have a few beers Saturday night and meet the locals, and then we would move on to the next town. And, some of those travels were big drives, and then we'd race again the next Sunday, the Saturday or Sunday. It was a great life.
So your competitors were also your traveling companions and your friends and your social environment.
Oh, totally. We'd train, and everybody knew to a degree who was going to win each race. Magog, Keegley, Asmith, Plitt was always there or thereabouts. It was too bloody hot for me. I would cook in those conditions, but they knew as soon as it got cold, there'd only be Claudio Plitt and myself left to fight it out. And then if it got really cold, well, the rest of them ended up in hospital, and I'd be the winner.
So by the time you get to, let's see, 84, 85, you're talking about these swims over 3 or 4 weeks. I'm guessing by that time you were getting to the point where you'd be legal to go to a bar, legal to order a beer. I've heard rumors, Philip, that you were the only one in the circuit that actually could race 50 kilometers and have the stamina to go to the local bar and chat to the local ladies. Any truth in that rumor, or were you in sort of was that something you weren't in the running for?
Well, no, I mean, it's all about endurance in these events, isn't it? And I like to think that we'd work hard. We'd work hard during the week. We would race hard. And then most of these swims were sponsored by the breweries, Molson's, and things like that. And they'd always put a function on. And then, like Memphis Magog, if I remember rightly, I think it was 6-to-1 ratio male to female. So there was a lot of females who were interested in swimming. We'll put it that way. So, but then once again, we'd be in the car, training on Monday again, racing again. So it was a very good lifestyle. We're all good friends. And we still are to today. We're great friends because we worked. There used to be a song they used to play. There was a Donna Summer song that each nightclub we went to on that on the night after the swim was, well, we work hard for our money, and that used to just get pounded out. But then once again, Sunday or Monday would come. We'd be traveling, swimming again, getting ready for the next event.
Tell us about the training. Were they in pools? Was it in the water you were going to race in?
No, most of the places we'd swim in the because there'd be a wide range. So you do your prep building up to going away. We would go into California and do a acclimatization camp, so to say, at a pool, and then up to Atlantic City. You didn't know whether it was going to be hot or cold. Atlantic City, so you get out in the sea, build up for that week, race, and then we'd move on to Magog. A lot of them would have a sprint, some sprint races on the Thursday before the big race, so you could earn a little bit more cash. And it was about work. We were working. It was. Paul Asmith came out of the national swim program in America and just missed out on being qualified for the 1500 or something, and James Keegley as well. And, they went earning money for the summer. You've got to remember in those days, I stand to be corrected, but the winner of Memphis Magog was picking up something like 20,000. 10,000, and there was money all the way down. Lake St. John in its day was 26,000 for the double crossing. And that was big money. It's still big money these days. And what has happened is, FINA do a great job in their own right, but they've gone in and taken over these swims now, and they've said, right, well, there's a purse of $10,000. It barely cover, I would think, it would barely cover your costs to get to the swims to race in them. We were, I remember one year in particular, I went back to Magog afterwards, and I was staying with some people, and we'd sitting there. I think I'd won 17,500 for coming second. And we were there, and the Frenchman in the restaurant, he said, you are from New Zealand. I said, yes, 17,500 US. He said, I've just read in the paper that Robert Muldoon, your Prime Minister, has just devalued your dollar by 20%. Well, that was the best thing that ever happened that year. It was, it made so many more New Zealand dollars. But, so we worked hard, we swam hard, and I'd say we played hard. And, but it was a great lifestyle for that period of time.
Tell me more about the kind of the workouts. So you guys meet at 9 o'clock in the morning or something at the lake, and do you say, okay, we swim over to the headland easy, and then we're gonna sprint back, or what did a workout with all of you characters look like? And did it was the workout ending up being competitive?
Not really, because we'd race hard. The racing was hard. It started in Atlantic City at about 18. I think it was sort of something like 18K, 80 miles, whatever it was. And Lake St. John double crossing was 42 42 miles. And so we weren't training hard during the week. Monday would be recovery, so we would travel and then we would swim. We'd all meet the same time, male and female, just go down. Who's swimming where? We'd just go out and do a light swim up to 45 minutes, just trying to get things flowing. By the middle of the week, we would do something relatively hard just to get the lactate moving through the system, and then it was literally our swims down into the weekend again, and we're racing. And we were eating well. We had all that travel to take into consideration as well. The towns would have massages for us. Distance wise over that period, we wouldn't be doing huge miles. We might do 15 Ks for the week or something like that. It wouldn't be huge because we were fit before we got there. I'd do a 3-month block of 100 Ks a week. And then once we started traveling, it would, we would maintaining what we had. And then I would go to the English Channel afterwards. So we'd go right out to the last swim out in Paspibiac, which was an invitational swim, and it was very cold. This water was hugely cold, and that's the one I loved. I remember vividly going and visiting. After 6 hours, everybody pulled the pin. All the swimmers ended up in hospital, and I was the winner. And I didn't even finish the race. But 6 hours and 6 degrees, everybody else was in hospital with hypothermia, and I won. But anyway, they were the sorts of things. And every swim was different. Maybe the event managers would put you up in accommodation. A lot of them had hotels that sponsored it. Atlantic City, each swimmer would get a hotel, get a casino, and they would go and stay at the casino, and obviously they'd look after you for food and everything like that. So once you started getting on the circuit, it was pretty. And in the end, it was like you were going to see your family, your Canadian family or your Quebec family. But it was very, very well organised. The events were very, very well organised, and we'd have. It was like a union. A group of senior swimmers would go and negotiate with the race organisers. As soon as we hit town, it would normally be Tuesday afternoon. There'd be a meeting with race organisers just to nut out safety. And the purse was there. They had to prove that the money was there, because we're not going to work hard for our money and then not get it. And then on Monday or Sunday, there'd always be a queue at the bank to cash the check and move on to the next town.
Tell us about the year when you set your English Channel three-way. I believe it was 1987. Looks to me on the records that you swam Memphis and Saint Jean and then headed off to England. What kind? Are we talking about a 6-week journey from home? Do you have a kit bag with a couple of pairs of extra underwear? I mean, the timing just boggles my mind.
Yeah, well, we would do 3 months. We'd be away for 3 months. So we'd acclimatise in America somewhere. Then we'd go to Atlantic City. That was always there. That was always a good warm-up. And then into Magog, which was a long, warm swim, up to St. John, which was a double crossing back then. So, and there was only a select 10 or 12 got selected for that. And then afterwards, Tony and I would literally head to the UK and sit there until we got a decent bout of weather. remembering we'd done this for the last 2 years prior. So 2 years prior, we'd started going to the UK, and you know what they're like over there down in Dover. You know, we said, oh, well, we're coming here to swim the English Channel 3 ways. And they looked at us and said, couple of bloody Kiwis from the sticks, there's no way you can do it. And that first year, we smashed the double crossing record and then sort of made them think a little bit more. But that 87, and I remember it, we were getting through the summer and it was rubbish. And we used a gentleman that a lot of people would know was Mike Oram. And Mike was very young and energetic back in those days, we'll say. And he'd just keep ringing up, or we'd ring him at 6 o'clock. We'd listen to the bloody whining television weather news. It was just depressing. And Mike said this day, he rang, he said, look, he said, we better get down to the boat. It's going to be calm. And we, you know, you're thinking, yeah, get a bed, get all the food made again, let's go. This was the 9th crossing. And my coach would only ever he wouldn't let me hop out halfway. So if it turned to rubbish, I had to swim the one crossing and would pull out after that. So this one day, and it was like a mirror. It was dead calm. And we started swimming, and I thought, oh, it's going to blow up soon. You know, you're getting across that first lap. It's going to blow up soon. It's going to blow up. The forecast is never right. Anyway, it stayed dead calm. We turned around, came back, and it was still dead calm. And the third lap was still dead calm. And the fourth lap would have been dead calm as well, but we decided to pull the pin after 2. But it's just we were with all the swimming you were doing, you were hard, you were fit, you were mentally on the edge at times because it's stressful racing. And, you know, Claudio Plitt and myself, 28 and a half hours across Lake St. John, looked at each other, stared at each other. He'd have a coffee. He had special coffee. I don't know what was in it, Ned. I read it to this day. But so, you know, he'd sprint ahead, or you'd have a quick feed and duck ahead and sort of zigzag away to try and get. But literally, we just looked at each other for 28 and a half hours, and then the race started with a mile to go. And Claudio, because he's a bit of a sly dog, he always seemed to beat me. He was just that much tougher, I would say. But, you know, one of the races, we ended up both in hospital and beds, bed beside each other. And he had won by 1/10 of a second and got $7,500 more than me. So, but it was, you know, you were still good friends. At the end of it, you'd shake hands and say, well, you know, you've had a good day, or you've had a bad day, or whatever. But it was the lifestyle. I'd be out in New Zealand for probably 4 months every year, and just traveling like they do on tours these days, whether it's rugby, soccer, or whatever. And as we got on, you just manage yourself while you're away.
I think it's something for the swimmers of a different generation. This idea of being away for that period of time, they just can't get their head around it. They might do a 2-week high altitude camp and go home for a week, and then off to somewhere else and back home for a week. The flights are easier, they're cheaper, they're faster. And as you say, the only sport that I can think of that still does it is, for example, the Lions rugby tour. Is a long, or some of the cricket tours are a long time.
But even now, going Southern Hemisphere, it's a long haul to go over and back. You know, I would still, if I was coaching, and, you know, obviously the Ocean 7's the one that sort of sticks in everybody's mind. We want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do it all in a year, or we want to do it. When you start actually, adding up the cost of doing that in a year, you have to be very well heeled to being able to get bookings in these on these swim events, and staying fit enough for that period of time to, you know, put yourself through hell is very difficult. And you're seeing that by the time the way that it's taking at least 2 years to get these swims out the way.
I was somebody said to me, if you throw in your coach, so there's 2 of you flying around, it can be 100,000 for the Ocean Sevens.
Oh, I would have probably thought you wouldn't be living that well at 100,000. You would be really trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel. I would have thought more 150 plus. That's sorry, New Zealand dollars, which aren't worth very much, but yeah, and it's the way the sport's changing. You know, people are looking for sponsors and things like that. The sponsorship doesn't seem to be there for the events anymore. I was lucky enough because by the end of it, I had a world ranking. Our governing sports body, if you were ranked in the top 10 in the world, they subsidised my flights. I was sponsored by a company that I also worked for, which was a money market, share market company, and they were very, very good to me. And, you know, I had for open water swimming, I had one of the biggest ever single sponsorships in New Zealand. And it was through knowing people, but also we were performing for them. We were getting their name on the international stage. And it was once again, at the end of it, you know, I retired from swimming well. You know, I was careful with my money that I'd earned. But at the end of the day, even the money wouldn't motivate me to keep going because it is a very, very hard sport. And you talk to any of those guys that were on that circuit back in those days, you know, we would be racing a marathon every Sunday for a month. And then you go, well, I went to the English Channel and then a few of them started following me to do different swims. But it was still, by the end of it, you're exhausted because mentally it is bloody hard and difficult to be putting yourself through that and getting good recovery for the next week.
Well, Philip, thank you very much. We're going to be talking to a couple of others to get some of their memories of those days. Interesting period in our sport,
Well, I'm glad I got in first because whatever they say is rubbish.
Thanks very much, Philip.
All the best. Thank you,
Hang on,
Nick.
don't go away. Don't go away.